Welcome back. This is the continuation of earlier video. In fact, this is the third video on monopoly. In this video, we are going to learn few more concepts related to monopoly. What we have learned so far, we did profit maximization for monopolist, and we started with Q. We had PQ, that is total revenue, minus C of Q, that is total cost, and from here what we figured out that like any firm, MR is equal to MC has to be true at optimal bundle, at let us say optimal bundle, that is QM PM, where is QM is the quantity and PM is the price that monopolist would set. We also figured out that in this particular case that P is not going to be equal to MR. In fact, P multiplied by 1 minus epsilon is going to be equal to MC. That's what we have figured out at the optimal bundle. But you should be a little bit of careful. In fact, it's my mistake also. But we do such mistakes all the time because first we pay attention to what we call first order condition. Using first order condition, this is what we have obtained. One should also check for some other conditions also that we have not done so. Here in this case, we will pay attention to that. What I am going to say that what is true that if QM comma PM is the optimal, then P multiplied by 1 by epsilon is equal to MC is going to be true, not the other way around. In other words, this is a necessary condition, but it is not sufficient. And that's what we have to be careful for. So let us look at it graphically. We have here Q, here we have P, we have a downward sloping demand curve. This is, let us say this is D, this is MR, and let us say this is MC. And it is from here where MR is equal to MC, we get QM, and at QM using the demand function, we get PM. This is what we did in the earlier video. Now we should go beyond and we should check how does the average cost curve look like. It is very much possible that average cost curve is like this. It's also possible that average cost curve is like this. All these possibilities are there. Let me draw the red curves again because that's a mistake. It shouldn't look like this. Why? I will tell you. The problem with this drawing is that the marginal cost curve should be cutting the average cost curve from below at its minimum price. So what we can say, we can have something like, let me draw another red curve. We can have something like, let us say, like this is a possible, this one is the possible one, but the first one was not possible one. So let us see what happens in the first case. The problem is in the first case that corresponding average cost at QM is greater than PM. What is the result? Let us calculate the profit at QM comma PM. What do we get? Profit is total revenue, that is QM multiplied by PM minus C of QM. If we take QM common, we are left with PM minus AC at QM. If AC is greater than QM, then this entity in the bracket is going to be negative. So the profit here is going to be negative. So if the firm doesn't produce anything, it's possible that firm will get only 0 profit, which is better than getting negative number. So in this particular case, firm should not operate if firm is allowed to charge a single pricing scheme. In this particular case, clearly PM happens to be greater than AC QM, then of course you should go ahead and produce it. There is absolutely no harm, at least this condition is satisfied. So you have to be very careful there. So in next question we do, in fact this should be AC. In next question we look at a problem that monopolist is facing. Instead of giving you the whole curve, we give you price quantity combination and corresponding marginal revenue, corresponding marginal cost, as well as average cost. So when Q is 0, P is 100, when Q is 15, P is 86, and so on. As Q is increasing, P is decreasing. So of course they are moving in the opposite direction. So that is clearly demand curve. Here we have MR is equal to MC. If you blindly go for MR is equal to MC, what would you get? You will get at Q equal to 15, MR is equal to MC. This is 71 and 71. But also at Q equal to 34, MR is equal to MC. Now you may think, because earlier we have seen done on the perfectly competitive side, we have done that if marginal cost is decreasing and then increasing, then go for the higher one, and you can say this one is correct. But you would be wrong. The problem here is coming from average cost. At 15, if you look at, average cost is 107, which is greater than the price, that is 86. So if firm produces, it will be making negative profit. Okay. If you go for Q equal to 34, again average cost is 72, which is greater than price 66, again you will have negative profit. And therefore you should not produce anything, you should go to Q equal to 0. Of course there P can be 100 or any number. When nothing is being produced, it doesn't matter how much is the P, and the monopolist should operate at Q equal to 0 rather than Q equal to 15 or Q equal to 34. This should be very clear to you. Of course, so we have gone beyond MR is equal to MC. Let me repeat it once again. It's good that you are trying to obtain, you are taking this help, MR is equal to MC, but you have to check more conditions. So wherever you get the correct answer, you should be getting MR is equal to MC except at Q equal to 0, which is not happening. In fact, at Q equal to 0, MR is not equal to MC, still you would be producing there. Okay, so that you have to be very mindful of. Is there a way out? Let us say, let us look at the problem once again. This is the case and this is what you have, and let us say that average cost happens to be this. So of course average cost is higher, PM, QM, this is MC, this is MR, this is D, this is AC. Now the idea is there a way out? Yes, there is a way out. What we can do is the two-part pricing, a slightly different pricing technique that we are talking about. What do we mean by two-part pricing? Let us forget this particular issue and concentrate on a simple problem to understand two-part pricing. We had talked about a demand curve is equal to maximum of 0, 10 minus Q with CQ equal to 2Q. Let us take this problem and let us calculate producer surplus, consumer surplus, and let us see, can a monopolist do better than simple pricing of the earlier case that we had discovered. So here you have, this is 10 minus Q, P equal to 10 minus Q. MR here, MR is going to be equal to 10 minus 2q. MC is going to be equal to 2 because CQ is 2. So, MC of Q is going to be simply 2, and this we had discovered earlier. So, we can see this is 2. And what is this point? 10 minus 2q is equal to 2. So, Qm is equal to 4, and this is Qm is equal to 4, and from here we get Pm is equal to 6. Okay. We do not have any average cost here, but here we have a simple attempt that how much producer is going to earn. We can calculate the profit to producer is going to be PQ PMQM minus C of QM. PM is 6, QM is 4, and C of QM, of course, we do not know the fixed cost, but we should not worry about it. We will see that profit can be approximated by producers surplus. Why? Because C is made of FC plus variable cost. We can obtain variable cost from marginal cost. How can we obtain variable cost from marginal cost? If we integrate the marginal cost from 0 to Qm, we will get variable cost at Qm. So, of course, we do not know the FC, but we know that this is the producer surplus. Okay. And so, that is clearly how do we, what is the producer surplus, and not just for the monopolist case, but for all cases producers surplus is equal to total revenue minus variable cost. How do we know that it is equal to this? Because we take the supply curve, here it is the, we take the, in the general cases we take the supply curve which is same as the marginal cost curve, and we take the area that is between the marginal cost curve and the total, the price, that is P, that one boundary is coming from P, another boundary is coming from Q, this, and then the lower thing is coming from marginal cost. So, this area that is equal to producer surplus. So, in this particular case it is 2. So, we can say here, we can write here that producer surplus is 16, because that is a proxy for profit, because of course we do not have fixed cost. We can also write the fixed cost, but here we do not have fixed cost. And as we are calculating, we can also calculate consumer surplus, which is equal to this particular area. So, this is 10, we have half multiplied by 4, and this is the height multiplied by 10 minus 6. So, consumer surplus is 8. And we can also look at this deadweight loss, which is this area. We have this deadweight loss as we are calculating. Let us calculate everything. Deadweight loss, which is and half multiplied by this height, which is 6 minus 2 multiplied by this base, and that is 8 minus 4, and that is equal to 8. So, that is the deadweight loss. Now, thing is, we can say, because fixed cost is not going to change, it does not depend on the production. So, we do not need to worry about fixed cost. We just have to check, can this producer who is monopolist can have higher producer surplus than 16 or not. So, let us consider a two-part pricing. It offers to customer that you have to pay first 8 as a fixed cost, fixed price, we can say fixed price, to participate in buying process, and then you have to pay 2 dollar 2 rupees to whichever the unit of this 2 per unit as the cost. What will happen? Of course, consumers would still be interested in doing that because this is the surplus they are getting. Anything up to 8 they would be willing to pay. This is what we have obtained. So, anything up to 8 they would be willing to pay. So, they will pay this 8 and then they will go, because 2 is the cost, they will go up to this point to purchase, because everyone here can purchase. So, that will make 8 plus 8 multiplied by, so total unit would be bought is going to be this much, and in that case the surplus to the monopolist is going to be equal to this area as well as this area, and this area monopolist will get as the fixed price in the beginning to participate in the process. So, monopolist will get 8 from here, and then this area that we have calculated, which is equal to 16 plus this is again 8. So, the total that will accrue to the monopolist is going to be 32, which is double of the producer surplus. So, this two-part pricing can really work in favor of monopolist, and we see at many places that this kind of mechanism is employed. So, if you want to purchase item from a club, first you have to pay a fee to join the club, and then you can pay items at really low price there. That is their marginal cost. Of course, it is also possible, let us look at, it is also possible that the monopolist can say that pay we can say can even go up to this point, that it can say to pay a fixed price of, let us say, in this particular case pay a fixed price of 50, I am just saying that 50, and then you can take as many item as you want, no marginal cost, 0. So, in that case people will go up to 10 units. So, the cost to the monopolist is going to be 10 multiplied by 2, that is 20, and monopolist would make 50 because that is the fixed it is getting, but it is losing 20. So, 30. It is better than single price, that in that case the surplus is just 16. Of course, here the situation is worse than this 32 because 30 is less than 32, but nevertheless it is better. So, that is, one can say this is approximate two-part pricing. So, of course, it all depends on the situation. We are not getting into the details of this mathematics, that you have, I leave it for advanced courses, but this two-part pricing is an important tool in toolkit of monopolist. Club is one example that I already told you. Another example is mobile telephony. First you have to pay some monthly rental, and then you have to pay to use mobile phone. Things like that, it works at several places. Getting back to our original problem, yes, there is a way out. It is very much possible that if monopolist is able to extract this consumer surplus from the buyer, and of course this it will get as producer surplus, a two-part pricing can still make this venture profitable for the monopolist. That is what I am getting at. Okay. So, let us move further. This video we are trying to close different things about monopolist. Can we talk about the supply curve of a monopolist? Our contention is that monopolist does not have a supply curve. Let us look at it using an example. Let us say, and this is a weird way I am drawing because my drawing is not that good. So, I figured out the way I should be drawing so that you understand. Let us say this is the marginal marginal revenue for one kind of demand, marginal revenue may be like this for the other kind of demand. Let us say, of course, we have to draw the corresponding demand function. In this case, the corresponding demand function is like this, and let us say this is the marginal cost curve. This is the marginal cost, and let us not be bothered about what we call is the average cost, whether the shutdown condition should be applied or not. Let us say there is no problem from that side. So let us look at, we have two different condition. Let us say this is demand 1, this is corresponding marginal revenue, this is demand 2, and this is corresponding marginal revenue. And let us see what's happening here. In the first case, of course, in both case QM is going to be the same. QM whether demand is D1 or D2. Both in this particular setting, the optimal amount of quantity for monopolist is going to be QM. But if it is demand 1, let us say if it is demand 1, then let us look at it. The price, so let us denote it by M1. QM1 should be sold in the market at price PM1. But if demand is D2, then let us look at it. The price should be PM2, and PM2 is clearly greater than PM1. So we see two different optimal combination, and that depends on the demand. If demand is 1 given by D1, then the combination is QM and PM1, and if it is D2, then it is QM and PM2. So what I am trying to say, that the price and quantity combination, it depends on the demand function that's coming from the demand function that is coming from the buyer side. Please understand the difference. When we talked about perfectly competitive market, we had demand, we had supply. And when we talked about supply, we didn't care what's happening on the demand side. The supplier did profit maximization, got its marginal cost curve, and that helps us get its supply function. As opposed to that, in this particular situation, when monopolist is selling items in the market, and if we want to draw its supply curve, we also have to look at the market demand function. What price a monopolist should charge has to depend on the market demand function, because price and quantity are related to one another through demand function. So here we cannot simply say Q is a function of P or P is a function of Q. We cannot say that. In fact, P is not just a function of Q, but it is also a function of whole demand curve, not just a point, but whole demand curve. And therefore, we can say that monopolist doesn't have a supply curve. So that is a big difference that you should keep in mind, and it's not required also. In fact, the marginal cost curve is playing the role. Of course, in perfectly competitive market, there are many price taker, so they are guided by the market equilibrium price. They look at the market equilibrium price and decide how many units to supply. As opposed to those firms, monopolist is facing the whole demand curve for itself, and so the quantity that it sells has to be linked to its price through the market demand function, and therefore no supply curve is needed or no supply curve can be given for the monopolist. Let us move further. In very beginning, we talked about that monopolist means there is only one buyer and there are sorry, there is only one seller and there are many buyers, but in practice it's difficult. So now we have learned another, the most important characteristics that monopolist has, that it is price maker as opposed to price taking behavior of firms in perfectly competitive market. So the main feature is that it is price maker. It decides how much is going to be the price at which it should be selling its good in the market. So we can say that there is a price maker in the market whose lead is followed by many price taker firm in the market. So let us say that market demand function looks something like this. This is market demand function, and I have been using a linear demand function, but that is not required. It is just easier to explain things using a linear demand function. And let us say that all other smaller firms are price taker. What does it mean? They look at the price and decide how many units can supply. So if we look at their supply function of all smaller firms together, let us say their supply function looks like this. This is the supply function. Now the question is, from where the price is coming? What we can say, the price maker firm, the bigger firm which is price maker, can look at the demand that is left by after all smaller firms. So we can say that it is going to be something of, let us say something, this is going to be look like something like this. This is the way this it's, or we can say this is the way, let me correct myself, this is not the way, it will not go down, it will become like this from here. How did I get it? So at this price, this much will be supplied by these fringe smaller firms. So complete market demand will be catered by these smaller firms. So how much this bigger price maker firm will supply? Nothing. So the demand curve, the derived, we can say derived demand curve will start at this price, and at this point these smaller fringe firms are not willing to supply anything. So if price goes lower than this, this price maker firm will cater to the whole demand. So let me draw it once again. This is the demand curve that is seen by demand, we can say demand curve faced by the price maker, or like a firm that is like a monopolist. If this is the demand curve, we can also get the marginal revenue, thinking because this is the demand curve that monopolist is facing. Using this, we can obtain the market demand curve, that the marginal revenue curve that this firm would be facing. And then we can also get into, we can say that this is going to be the, let us say this is going to be marginal cost curve of the price maker, the practical monopolist. Price maker is equal to practical monopolist. So what we can see, where do we see intersection? This is MR, that the firm is getting, and so this is what this practical monopolist will supply. And at which price? The price is going to be this much, because this is the demand curve, that this one is the demand curve that this practical monopolist is seeing. And at this price, how much these fringe firms are willing to supply? this much the fringe firms are willing to supply. But how did we get this derived function? We took this function and subtracted the supply curve of these fringe elements. So, if we add this much, we are back to this particular point, and this is what would be the total Q total. QM will come from the practical monopolist or price maker, and this much, which is also equal to this much, is going to come from fringe, QF, fringe competition, because they will take price as given. This practical monopolist would be setting the price. So, what I am trying to say, of course, you will not see exactly the same situation. The issue here is very simple, that please understand that in theory only you have only one seller and many buyers. In theory only you have price takers. You have to look at the situation and you have to approximate how you are going to model the market in that approximate manner. And that's why I am telling you that here is a situation in which there is a practical price maker. He is deciding the price, but he is also facing competition by many smaller firms, which they take the price set by this price maker as given. We can call it a practical monopolist with fringe competition. I hope this is clear to you. Let us now come to impact of tax imposition. What is going to happen? Let us look at it again. Most of these I am illustrating with example. It's easier to understand. Here is a linear demand. Here is marginal revenue. This is demand. This is marginal revenue. This is P. This is Q. Let us say this is the marginal cost curve. Okay. What is demand? We can say A minus BQ. This is A minus 2BQ, and let us say this is MC. If a tax is imposed on the monopolist, let us say that tax is of C, then marginal curve, cost curve will shift upward, and this is MC plus T. How we are going to figure out? Now the new point is A minus 2BQ, because this is what MR is, equal to the new marginal cost is MC plus T, which we can say MC is just equal to C, small c, we can say C plus T, that is MC, and from here we can get the Q, which is A minus C minus T divided by 2B. So, we can say the change in quantity because of tax imposition, the rate of change in quantity because of tax imposition is minus 1 by 2B. From here we can get the rate of change. And so, how much is going to be the change in price? Let us say P is related to quantity with A minus BQ. So, we can say if we want to obtain rate of change in P with respect to T, what do we get? That first we can say rate of change in P with respect to Q, and then rate of change in Q with respect to T, and this happens to be minus B, and this happens to be minus 1 by 2B. So, minus minus will cancel, this B will cancel, 1 by 2, and that is half of the tax. So, how much is the change in price? We can say change in price is basically delta T by 2. Half of the tax will be paid by monopolist and half of course will be paid by consumer. But is this the case always? Not so. Let us go back and think of a situation. Here we have taken perfectly elastic, that marginal cost is flat, horizontal. I don't think it's good idea to say elastic or inelastic here. Consider a slightly different case where demand curve is of the same elasticity everywhere. What would be the example? Example is going to be, let us say P is equal to, let us say 5 by Q. Here if you calculate the elasticity, everywhere it is equal to 1. Okay, but we don't have to say that elasticity has to be equal to 1. We can take elasticity equal to 2 also. Let us say Q is equal to P to the power minus 2. Here elasticity is everywhere 2. So this is the case. What do we get? We have already calculated the formula P multiplied by 1 by epsilon is equal to C. That's what we have here. So if there is a change in the, this is the marginal cost. Let us say if marginal cost goes up by, let us say, T, we can say, delta P by delta T is equal to 1 by 1 minus 1 by epsilon, which if you check is certainly larger than 1, because we have already figured out that on elastic part 1 by epsilon is going to be 1 minus 1 by epsilon is going to be less than 1. So this whole thing is going to be greater than 1. What does it mean? That change in price is going to be larger than delta T, which is strange. What does it mean? That monopolist would not only ask the customer to pay all the taxes, but also will take advantage of this situation and take little extra for itself. So here impact of tax imposition is slightly different. Again, I do not get into details for all the situation. I just wanted to illustrate that in case of monopoly, the behavior is very different from supplier. So you have to be mindful of that. Now let us come to what we call sources of monopoly. What are the different sources? Because of that we get monopoly in the market. We are going to talk about two different kind of barriers. Of course, the barriers are required. So first, we can say, if you remember, in perfectly competitive market, one requirement was that no barrier to entry or exit. The result was that as firms were making economic profit greater than 0, it gave others incentive to enter the market. As more firms enter the market, supply increased, and as a result, market price decreased. And as market price decreased, their economic profit also decreased. It kept on happening till economic profit reached to 0. And it also in the opposite direction, if firms were making loss, they can freely exit the market, and as they exit the market, supply in the market decreases, that increases the market price, which increases the profit. So from, if its profit is increasing, earlier it's less than 0, now it's increasing, it will keep on happening till it reaches to 0. So in the long run, what we figured out, not only P is equal to MR is equal to MC, but it is also equal to AC. Here we have barriers. That's why there is only one firm operating in the market and others cannot enter, or if others are entering, they are playing very small role. They are not playing the pivotal role in the economy. They are not that important. So we are going to talk about different barriers, economic as well as legal. So first is that exclusive control over essential factor of production, and this is a very good example. Earlier there was De Beers, they had kind of monopoly, again not 100%, but 88 to 92% market share they had. Why did they had such a large market share? Because they had exclusive control over diamond mines in Africa. And because to sell diamond you needed diamond, and they were controlling all the diamond mines, and that's why they had the monopoly. But you can think of, you have some rare factor of production which others have no access to, they cannot come into the market supplying that item, and there would be a monopoly. Second would be technological supremacy. That let us say that there exists a firm which has a much better technology than any other, so they can supply in the market at much lower price, and therefore it would deter all others from entering the market, because to set up the factory they would incur the fixed cost and they would think they are not able to recover their cost because someone would be selling the same product at the lower price. They would not enter in the market. So technical supremacy plays a role. Economy of scale we have discussed. Let us look at the case of natural monopoly. We will come back to that. Let us say that it so happens that average cost is everywhere falling. Of course, I am talking about an extreme case. You don't need that average cost should be falling everywhere, but let us try to understand what does it mean that if 100 units need to be supplied, the cost for one firm is, let us say, AC 100. If there are two firms supplying, it means, and let us say they all are supplying 50-50, AC 50 is much higher. So two firm, if they are in the market, their cost of production per unit term will go up, and so it makes sense that only one firm is selling its item in the market. What is more important, not that it should always be decreasing, we can say here is the demand function, and let us say that average cost looks like something like, let us say that, so till this is best for that one firm to produce, because in all the range where the production should take place, if only one firm is producing, then the average cost is falling. If this is the case, we call it natural monopoly. An example would be the telephony, when you had to lay lines, or we can say electricity supply. The same company can supply at lower rate, although now we have learned to separate different part of electricity. We can say electricity production is not a monopoly. Generator companies can compete against one another, but transmission is perhaps a monopoly. Similarly, in railway services may not be monopoly, but rail services, in Hindi we call it patri, the rail on which the train runs, that is clearly a monopoly. More company laying the line doesn't make sense. One company can do a better job. Similarly, capital need, if the money required to start a company, capital required to start a company is very, very high, then it deters others from entering the market. So that can also be a source of monopoly. If we already talked about technological supremacy will lead to cost lead, but let's say for some other reason, if a company has cost lead, it would also give rise to monopoly. Similarly, next is market manipulation. If government is not able to regulate these companies well, they can form a cartel. The four companies are there, let us say 4 companies are in the market, they can come together and they can start behaving like a monopoly and divide their profit among themselves. But as a result, as a whole, they will be charging higher price and they will be selling lower quantity. But in future lectures we will see that cartelization is not that easy. There are forces that works against cartelization, but market manipulation can also lead to monopoly. So these are the some basic factors that have on the economic side. On legal side also we should understand that there can be factors that gives rise to barriers, like patent. It is done legally. Patents, why patents are given? What is patent, by the way? Patent is an exclusive right to produce a particular item. Typically it is given to the earliest innovator. The idea is that innovation requires a lot of fixed cost, upfront fixed cost, and so if they expect that they would not be able to recover their fixed cost in the future, then they would not invest in the beginning, and as they would not invest, they would not be able to come up with the new product, and therefore it will kill the innovation in the market. So therefore, to promote innovation, the government is willing to give patent to the first producer, like for example, like COVID vaccine, the company that came up with the COVID vaccine first was given patent to sell its vaccine in the market. They had exclusive right. So that helps. The idea is very simple, that you can, if patent is not given, producing first vaccine was immensely costly, but second vaccine may not be that costly, it can be copied. The same example, although it's not patent but it's a copyright, think about Windows CD. Window software, it took lot of effort from Microsoft to come up with that software. First software was immensely expensive, perhaps millions and millions of dollars. The second CD is very easy. If you have a CD writer, you can write it very easily, or you can download it these days, put it in the pen drive. The cost of that is equivalent to pen drive. But if Microsoft is not guaranteed that it would be able to recover its fixed cost, the sunk cost, and make more money, it would not invest its resources in coming up with this new window product, and therefore patents are given. But once patent is given, the company has exclusive right to sell that item, and that gives rise to monopoly. Second could be government licenses. Government for some reasons may like to limit competition in the market. Earlier example, royal charters were given in the olden age, that only you have exclusive right to produce this particular item. And once you have that right, of course it disallows others to enter the market. There is only one seller in the market, and therefore that seller is going to be monopolist. So that's it on monopoly. We will meet next week. We will keep talking about topics related to monopoly, but this is the basic discussion we had for monopoly, very important for today's world. So I hope you understand it well. Thank you.